Hi reader friends, it's Mrs. Palin, the librarian, pardon me, with today's book review. Read a wonderful book by Andrea Davis Pinkney called With the Might of Angels. This one is a historical fiction story set in Virginia in the 1950s. Now, if you know a little bit about American history, you know that we had a horrible, shameful period of slavery in our country. And when it ended, it didn't just end for African Americans. Their lives after emancipation were very, very difficult. And even 100 years later, in the 1950s, their lives were still very, very separate and difficult. They, couldn't go to the same schools as white children. They had their schools, which were run down and horrible. And then the white kids had these beautiful other schools. You may have heard of a little girl named Ruby Bridges, who was one of the first elementary school Black-aged children to enter. That name is pretty popular in the 1950s and the story of segregation and getting rid of it, getting rid of that separation. This is a very similar story to Ruby Bridges' story. Donnie Ray is a middle schooler, though. So rather than the Ruby Bridges perspective in elementary school, where thank goodness Ruby had a lovely teacher who taught her even though nobody else would come to school. Donnie Ray is the main character of this one, and she's in elementary school. And she has passed a test, and the court has ruled that Black children have to be allowed into white schools. And this school that she has wanted to go to forever, it's just beautiful. She wants to be a doctor, and she knows that the only way she can get there is by attending one of these good schools that is not all run down and excuse me. The problem is that nobody wants her there. Principal doesn't want her there. The teachers don't want her there. The kids don't want her there. The white parents don't want her there. And she somewhat expected that racism at the school. She did not expect it among her own people. Even her best friend started calling her uppity for wanting to go to the white school. And her family just wanted what was best for her. And they knew that taking this step was a way to move the country forward. And it was scary and it was horrible, but she knew what her goal was, and down deep in her heart, she knew she was just as good or even better intellectually than some of these kids in the school. And so it is her struggle, and in Donnie Ray's struggle, we learn so much about the movement to desegregate the country in the 1950s and those struggles and what that community did. And there is mention of a boycott in here, which was very, very, it was a fake boycott, but African Americans did a lot of boycotts to peacefully challenge things like eating at the same counters and drinking at fountains and riding the bus, with which you probably know. And I enjoyed the last part of the book, which had primary source things that helped explain some of this, so readers could get a little bit of extra info. So with the might of angels, Donnie Ray went to school, challenged the norms and the accepted ways. Historical fiction, but we learned so much about the 1950s and those struggles in the book. It was lovely. Read it, share it, whatever you're reading, friends, keep reading. See you soon.